Yo, 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 this is Mongo, and we're here. This is going to be my op-ed article. So, it has come to my attention that a lot of people seem to think that Kazuchika Okada is the greatest wrestler of all time, or even one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I I disagree with this. Um, I'm going to be honest here. Um, I'm going to hold him to the same standard that other people hold American wrestlers to. I don't think that Japanese wrestlers are really uh, judged the same way as American and British and even Mexican wrestlers are. And I think that's it's pretty clear here that there is a the tastemakers in the wrestling business seems to just like Okada, and they are just going to basically push him onto everybody and seven-star us to death with how great he is, and there's no ever any criticisms of his work or anything. So I'm going to do that here. I'm not going to just shred the guy because I don't like him. I actually do like Okada. It's just that I want to be honest in a way that other people aren't about his strengths and weaknesses as a character. So I'm going to start off with something that's not his fault, and that is he is currently the biggest star in Japan, which is fine, but Japan is an island. There's 130 million people in Japan, um, and the Tokyo Dome fits about 40,000 people. I think they had a complete sellout at Wrestle Kingdom 14 of day one. Um, and New Japan is actually doing quite well with Okada at the top. So he is, a moneymaker. But in the United States, he's not a moneymaker. Nobody cares about Kazuchika Okada. So he's not a multinational, global superstar. And I think to be the greatest wrestler of all time, you would kind of need to be the greatest wrestler, at least known in the world. You have to at least be known in the world, right? So like that should be like the basic minimum. And I'm not just saying only WWE guys could be the greatest wrestler of all time. You can even say Sting is the greatest wrestler of all time if you want to. You can say other people. I'm not saying that you have to be from WWE. I'm just saying you have to be somebody that people recognize. And I'm not even talking about a mainstream movie star, that kind of thing. I'm just saying you have to be known and be an attraction and more than just in your quote unquote hometown, or in this case, your home country. Because you can be a big star in your hometown or in your home country, and nobody gives a shit about you the moment you step over the border. And I think that's kind of what it is with Okada. Now, there are some audiences in the United States that are big fans of Okada. There's a lot of people in, the wrestling towns, the Philadelphias and the New Yorks and the Chicagos and certain parts of California, and maybe even certain parts of Texas who think that Okada is a big deal. These are the people who are on the internet, the kind of people who are probably watching this video or listening to this video, who think that Okada is the best wrestler of all time. Um, he's a seven-star super classic guy, but it's it's most other people who is the majority of people do not know who this guy is. He's pretty important in Japan. He's gonna, be the torchbearer for the Olympics. So he's an athletic, star in Japan. Not diminishing that, but Japan is an island. It is a small, relatively xenophobic uh, ethno state where there's just one kind of person on the island, and it's Japanese and native Japanese people. There's a few people here and there that break through and become big stars in Japan, but mostly Japan is all about the Japanese, and it's actually a bigger deal to be a crossover star with multiple different demographics than it is to just be a star where you are. Like it's easy to be a Japanese star when you're Japanese. It's much harder to be a star, to be a Japanese star in the Americas or in Mexico, where and other people have done it. You know, other people have done it. There are people who are bigger, Japanese wrestlers who are bigger stars in Mexico than they are in Japan. There are Japanese wrestlers that are bigger stars in the United States than they are in Japan. It's just, you should be multinational at least. And I don't think that Okada is a multinational superstar. And it's not really his fault. Again, it's not his fault that he was born in a country that has one demographic in it. That's not his fault. So it's not really a knock, but it kind of sets the stage for why he gets to be the way he is in it and not be looked down upon for it. Because obviously, this goes into another thing that I wanted to say is that it's really also not his fault. Is the match lengths. Um, you can have a 35-minute match, and it could be gripping and it could be interesting. But when you have these matches repeatedly, it does take away some of the drama and some of the excitement. Here's what I mean. If I know the match is not going to end, at least within the first 20 minutes, why would I pay attention to the first 20 minutes? I know that nothing that happens in the first 20 minutes is going to matter at the end, which is also a thing that happens in a lot of these Japanese matches. Is they do, they do a lot of the tumbling and choreographed stuff, and none of the shit matters at the end. It's just all, and Okada's matches are kind of like that. They're just they're good technical matches. He's not a bad worker. He's a good worker. He's smooth. He's efficient. I don't think he does too much. He doesn't do a lot at all, which is not a problem for me. Like he's not going to spam Canadian destroyers and Spanish flies on me, which is good. But at the same time, he can work that style, but why does it need to be 30 minutes? Because that means that pretty much he's going to take abuse the whole match. And that's pretty much what he does. He works a John Cena, Roman Reigns type style where he just gets beaten up for 15 to 20 minutes and then he wins in the end. But unlike Roman Reigns and John Cena, he doesn't get penalized for working that kind of match. People don't really care. They actually give him credit. Oh, he kicked out of somebody's finisher, or maybe sometimes they try to protect the guy's finish and Okada doesn't kick out of it. But ultimately, we know that the match is going to be 30 minutes and Okada's going to be on defense for most of it. It's going to be a situation where, his opponent is going to, kick out of his finish once or twice, sometimes even 3 times. And it's going to get hailed as being the best match ever, anywhere. And it's like, it's the same fucking match he's had 100 times. I literally cannot tell certain matches apart. Like, there are certain matches he had with Tanahashi where I could not tell you how that match differed from the match before. And you may say, well, you're a low IQ. You don't understand pro wrestling. You don't understand Japanese style pro wrestling. You don't understand King's Road. You don't understand strong style. You don't understand it. And I'll say, well, I do, for starters. Secondly, if every match is the same, around the same length, and everybody is doing the exact same things, and that the language barrier is one thing, of course, because, there's going to be things that are going to be lost in transition, which is also not his fault that I don't understand his promo abilities. But, which is why I'm not going to bring up whether he can cut a promo or not. But it's when you have matches that are the same structure, they run together. And when your matches run together, it becomes just a big blur. And it's good to watch. Like, it's fun to watch an Okada match. But once I've seen it, I don't need to see it again. I've never felt the need to see one of his matches twice. None of them. And I can say that they're good matches, but I just never say, like, hey, I need to watch this match again. And it just never felt that way to me. For starters, I always think the matches are too long. Like, if it takes him the same amount of time to beat everybody, does that mean that everybody is just as good as he is? Or does that say that, he's winning by the skin of his teeth? I mean, those are stories that you can tell because both of those stories have been told. Last year when he wrestled Sonata, I forget which time he wrestled Sonata. I think it might have been I don't want to lie and say New Japan Cup, but it was one of the times when he wrestled Sonata, and it was basically the story was, can Sonata finally beat him? And the match was again 30 goddamn minutes, and Sonata lost. So apparently we answered the question of whether Sonata can beat him, which is no. And it took him just as much of time to beat Sonata this time as it beat him any other time. So it didn't progress Sonata any, because it's not like Sonata got beaten by Okada in 10 minutes before, and then it takes him 45 minutes to beat him later, where you can tell that story. But it doesn't, like New Japan really prides itself on its match lengths and its mat times. And, Kevin Kelly goes on and on about it. So it's not his fault that he doesn't book the length of his own matches. And I'm pretty sure that the Japanese audience wants that. So that's not his fault. But just because the match is 30 minutes doesn't mean it need to be the same 30 minutes. It can look differently. You can do the match differently. And I don't think that he does the matches differently enough. They're not. They needs to be varied lengths. And I know he went through a spell when he had the red hair and he was losing a lot, and it was him doing something different, and that was interesting. But other than that type of thing, my problem number 3 is that Okada has no fucking personality. And this is not a language barrier issue. This is Okada has a permanent resting face where he seems to just not give much away as far as his body language is concerned. Now, there are times where he has moments. There was a time where he cried after losing to Tanahashi, and that was good. I liked that. That actually made me interested in what he was doing. But for the most part, Okada has this pretty much the same look on his face through the entire match. And it's not interesting. And then he has no character. What is the Rainmaker? What is that? Oh, he's the top draw. That's why he's the Rainmaker. Okay. What does that mean though? Like, he has to get, that means his gimmick is I'm the champion. His gimmick is that he's the champion. So what happens when he's not the champion? Is he still the Rainmaker? Yes, because he's still the top guy. Okay, just like Tanahashi is still the ace, even though he's not the champion. That makes sense. But it needs to be verbalized to me. I need to be seen what the Rainmaker is. I need to feel that the character has something other than he's the top guy because we made him the top guy. Therefore, his gimmick is he's the top guy. Like that's not that's not good. And it doesn't have anything to do with the language barrier, again, because there are other Japanese wrestlers who have had gimmicks where their gimmick is easily seen. Even something as simple as what Naito does as far as Tranquilo and how he, has certain acts. Like he has charisma. Naito doesn't do a lot either, but he has charisma. He has an attitude. He has a way of carrying himself. It's not just that Naito goes out and has the same 30-minute match and does his same usual spots and everybody golf claps for it and gives him a hell of a lot of credit. It's that he does different things. He has a different body language. He carries himself a little bit differently. Like the time when he used to carry the Intercontinental Championship, he would throw it around, and he just didn't care about it. Like he didn't give a shit about being that champion. He wanted to be the top guy. Like there's certain attitude, how he would play with the crowd. How Naito played with the crowd about, whether he takes his pants off now or he takes his pants off later, or he won't take his pants off at all. Like that kind of, when he was wrestling in a t-shirt, like he didn't give a shit. Those types of things matter, because it tells something to me, the person who doesn't speak Japanese, what the character is thinking about this situation, this match, how he's going to mentally manipulate his opponents. That certain thing, that type of stuff matters. And I don't get that from Okada. I don't see that from Okada. And I'm pretty sure somebody who has studied him far more extensively than I am can go into the comment section and tell me I'm wrong about everything. And that's fine. I'm talking about my opinion of Okada. And I don't think that he has a big character. or a big personality. But my number one problem is that I don't think he has intensity. I don't think he has fire. I don't think he has desire. I don't think he has drive. It's part of the thing that I just don't see from him. This goes back into the body language. This goes into character. This is, I know he wants to be the champion. I know that, through video packages of just, me watching video packages, I know that being champion is important to him. But I don't know what else is important to him. Like, what else matters? Does being champion the only thing that matters? Because if that's the case, that's not interesting, because you need to be able to do other things. You have to be versatile. As far as right now, we're having like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Tough Enough. He was talking about mechanics, guys who can do good mat work, but they couldn't cut a promo. They didn't know how to project their wants and desires. They didn't know how to project their body language. They didn't know how to grip the audience. And it works. What Okada does works on a certain segment of the audience and in his own country where people are very subdued and very humble. It works there, but it doesn't work here. It doesn't work in the United States. It's not, we're used to bigger personalities. We're used to, I don't want to compare him to anybody in the WWE. I think the closest comparison would probably be Randy Orton, because Randy Orton is very smooth. Randy Orton doesn't do a lot. He's a chin lock king. He'll grab it. He put you on a chin lock and hold you forever. Randy Orton probably does 3 moves the whole match, and and he pretty much builds his entire match around the RKO. That's pretty much it. But we've seen Randy Orton do certain things, like the whole punting people in the head and snapping. We don't see that. Like, Okada is only 27. There's still time, and there's still plenty of time for him to develop that sort of vicious, attitude. That sort of intense, I'm going to rip this guy to shreds kind of attitude that I like to see, and especially in wrestling. I don't want to see wrestling as a dance. And even when you talk, certain Japanese wrestlers come across like machines, where they're kind of emotionless, but there's very subtle emotion where you have to really be paying close attention. And then there's other guys, like for me, Kenta Kobashi is one of the best, because I feel it. Like when he's, there was matches when he had with like Misawa, or I would just be like, this guy is like literally burning up inside. And I know it's kind of fixed with his gimmick, the burning hammer and all that stuff, but you could see it like coming off of his, like almost coming off of his skin. You could almost like visualize it. I can't visualize it like with Okada. I see it. I saw how cool Shinsuke Nakamura was in Japan. Like, it wasn't that intensity, but there was something that projected off of him where I can look and be like, oh, this guy's awesome. And there's other, like the Great Muta is another one. Like, you could just look at him and he looks different. He comes across different. He has, he's a little bit vicious. When he was in WCW, he was vicious. He spit the mist in people's faces. And he often cheated and he went overboard. And it was really, really good stuff, but I don't see any of that from Okada. And I think that part of it is people have dumped so much praise on him so fast that it's almost like he's trapped in a box where he can't do anything different. And I know that they went through that short time with him with the balloons and all that stuff, but he needs to be something other than I'm the champion. It needs to be something more than that. He needs to be more than a mechanic who has 30-minute matches every night, and you could trust that they're going to be pretty good. And then the tastemakers say, oh, he's the greatest wrestler of all time, even though they don't understand a word he says. They can't really verbalize what his character is. They don't really look at him and say, hey, what's up with his body language? What's up with his, what is his character trying to tell me? What is his character, you know, what about the decision making? That's the sports presentation of New Japan, which is also not his fault. Like, you know, like he's not ever put in a position where he's like the junkyard dog where he gets tarred and feathered, and it's like, oh, now what do you do? You know, like when the junkyard. I think I've talked about this in a previous video about the junkyard dog and Butch Reed, where you know you have again these alpha males who are fighting, and one of them is humiliating the other. You know, and he has to bounce back from that. The junkyard dog has to bounce back from being humiliated by another man. You know, we don't see that a lot of that from New Japan. There's not a lot of humiliation in that way for a guy to have to fight back from it. And that's not Okada's fault either. You know, so I don't wanna make people think that, oh, Okada's not booking his own angles. Of course he's not. But that also is probably why, you know, you don't see a lot of people getting that excited about when, you know, there's an excitement when New Japan comes to America because it doesn't come here that often. But if they were on TV and doing things regularly, I don't think people would think that he was the greatest wrestler of all time anymore. Like, I don't think people care that much about Kenny Omega anymore. It's like, it's cool when you see him once a month and you think that, oh my God, he had this 30-minute classic and I probably won't get to watch him again for another 28 days or another 34 days until the next tournament, or he's going to be in some useless tag team match and I might not watch that. But when you're on TV every single week, you're looking at ways of making yourself and keeping yourself interesting. It's very different because some people can do that. And that's why when you say somebody is the greatest wrestler of all time, you have to be certain that to segment these situations. I don't think Okada's even the best wrestler ever come from Japan. I don't. For the reasons that I've said. If you take out the things that I say that are not his fault, like how long his matches are, or whether he's the top star in Japan. It's like, okay, there's been 1,000 top stars in Japan. That's just how it works. There's new generations of fans. But when you look at how everything's put together, he doesn't cross barriers. I don't see him being a big star in the United States or in Mexico or in England. And you could say, well, he's as big a star as random indie guy blank. And it's like, okay, well then I guess Jay Lethal was the best wrestler of all time because he was the top guy in Ring of Honor, and his gimmick was I'm the top guy. You know. Now you could say, well, Jay Lethal wasn't a draw. ROH is dead. Yeah, yeah. I won't disagree with that. But you know, my biggest problems is I think that he has the same match repeatedly. Not just because he does the same moves in every match. Every wrestler pretty much does the same moves and in different spots. I think that what Okada executes very well. I think what he does, with the exception of maybe the Rainmaker clothesline, which I think is shit. I think it's probably like it's not probably, it's one of the worst finishers in the world. Now you can say, well, no, it's not. It's in Japan. The lariat is a good move. I don't care, man. Like, look at his arms. Look at his picture and look at his arms. Like, a guy with arms like that hitting you with a clothesline. I mean, and it's a short arm clothesline too. Like, Jake Roberts used a short arm clothesline to set up for the DDT. This guy uses a short arm clothesline as a finish. Look, it's wrestling. It doesn't matter. But to me, it kind of stands out that, you know, a not really all that brutal looking clothesline is considered a finisher. Which, hey, whatever. I know in Japan they like clotheslines. You know, Hogan used a clothesline in Japan. Stan Hansen used a clothesline in Japan. I think he used a clothesline, period. Or the lariat. I'm sorry. I understand if it's a clothesline, if they get up. If it's a finish, it's a lariat. So I got that. So, but I don't think Okada is the best wrestler of all time. I think he's overrated. And he's only overrated because people on the internet make him overrated. I don't think he's a bad worker. I don't think he's trash. I don't think that he's a waste of time. I don't think that, none of that. I just think that he's a top guy in a nation where it's difficult for people who don't look like him. And this is not political. I'm just stating a fact. Where it's difficult for people who don't look like him to become a top guy. You know, it's it's easier in Japan to be a Japanese star. Just like it was easier for the Von Erichs to be top stars in Texas. It's not racist to say that. It is not. I mean, Texas is what it is. It was it liked guys from Texas. It just is what it is. If you was from New York, you know, you were the hometown boy. You get cheered more than anybody else. It's the same way in Japan. Now you could say, well, it doesn't help Hiroki Goto to be Japanese, and it doesn't. He is who he is. It doesn't help other people to some degree because all of them are Japanese, but it it helps him when it comes to being portrayed as a star in that country, that people are more receptive to him because he's a hometown boy, you know. And you can say the same thing about American stars too, right? Like you could say, well, Stone Cold Steve Austin is a character that doesn't really break down boundaries because he's, American, a top American star in America. It's like, yeah, but Stone Cold Steve Austin is also the top star in every country he stepped in. And that's the difference. The Rock was a top star in America, sure. But he was also the top star in Canada when he stepped in Canada. He was also the top star in Mexico when he stepped in Mexico. That's how he was able to do what he does. That's how you grow the brand. And we also have to remember that New Japan has also had often these times of the company being damn near dead. So they had to keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back. And the work that Okada is doing, with the groundwork was laid by Tanahashi, who kind of saved New Japan and made it possible for Okada to take it to the next level. So it's not like Okada go from 0 to 60. He picking up from a champion who was very popular and very important and also a cultural hero in Tanahashi. So he's a guy who, has just taken the baton and he's running with it. But I don't see in Okada what I saw in Tanahashi. I don't see the charisma. I don't see the passion. I don't see the intensity. I don't see the desire, the need that I see in Tanahashi. Like I've seen matches with Tanahashi. I'm just kind of like, the guy's amazing. I know that Tanahashi is also kind of overrated by the intelligentsia of the wrestling world, but they are both amazing workers. If you like professional wrestling, you should like these guys, and I do. I just don't think they're the best wrestlers in the world, mainly, and you could say it's because of the language barrier. Okay, but doesn't invalidate my argument, because if I think somebody is a great wrestler in Mexico, the thing you will say is, well, he's Mexican. Okay, who cares? Like, I know that when we talk about, biggest stars of all time, certain people will say, oh, well, El Santo was a bigger star in Mexico, where he had comic books and movies. And I'll say, yeah, but outside of maybe heavily Hispanic areas in Texas and Arizona and parts of California, who the hell knows about El Santo? You have to be, he's been dead a long time. That's like saying, well, Vern Gagne is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time because he had a movie. He was on TV. Do you think Vern Gagne is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time? Probably not. How many people have actually sat down and studied Vern Gagne? Now, well, I've watched him. I think he was a good worker. But I don't think that he was, if he were, I have to segment that to his time frame, because Vern Gagne was a star in the 50s, in the 60s, 60s, 70s, something like that. Because I know the AWA went out of business in like the early 90s. So in the internet era, Okada is a good wrestler because people can see it. And if it was the 90s, he would be a hot tape, with people passing around tapes to show how good he is. But I don't think they would be saying he was the greatest wrestler of all time. I don't think he's the greatest Japanese wrestler ever. I definitely think that Jushin Liger is better than he is. I think that Great Muta is better than he is. I think Tanahashi is better than he is. I think Misawa and Kobashi are better than he is. I even like Nakamura, even though a lot of people are not fans of how Nakamura is running in the United States. I think that he's a, a more important than Okada. And I think that everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And we don't talk enough about Okada's weaknesses. And I just don't think he's the greatest wrestler of all time. And who do I think is the greatest wrestler of all time? Well, we'll probably get into that some other time. But that's all I had to say for today. This is an op-ed. Um, I will talk to you guys later. Send all hate tweets to @MongoSlade8 and hit the like button. Feel free to disagree in the comment section. And I will talk to you guys later. Peace.